All right, this is Sherman Tank coming at you again here with uh,
David with Fire Nation.
Fire Nation. Thank you. I was trying to think. I was trying to get the whole name in there. I was going to say David, and then I'm like, what am I going to say after that? So, as usual, we're on here and we're chatting a little bit. I'm going to go on Facebook and make sure that we are coming through. Good to go. Should be right now. Yep, there it is. Patriot calling. We are on, man. Everything's working. Wow, that never happens.
Heck yeah,
Everything's
that
working
never
like it's
happens.
supposed to. So give me a second. I'm going to start the video, and I want to make sure that we're not going to be. We don't have any feedback. We don't have any echoing, nothing like that. So if you're watching, let me know if you got any echo on your end. David, go ahead and say something.
Test 1 2, test 1 2, 1 2 3 4 5 6. America, this is 9/11, and we have a beautiful day out there. We've got a lot of patriots out there who are fighting for our rights, and that is test over.
All right, how's the audio, everybody? Everybody hearing us clearly? Everybody, no echoing, nothing like that. Sounds great. All right. Steve Owen gives us a thumbs up. He said it sounds great. So, well, I wanted to come on here tonight and talk a little bit about 9/11, talk a little bit about patriot groups in general, three percenters, whatever you want to call them, whatever have you. Just patriotic Americans. And it's been a while since I've done a video, and a lot of that's been because I've been doing a lot of work. I've been shorthanded at work, so I've been working a little extra hours, a couple extra days a week, and so one of the things that we've got going on in our life is we're actually looking at buying a house. So that's taking up some of our time too. But I think today is a day that needs to be remembered, at least for the rest of our lives. And we need to make sure that our next generation and generations to follow remember this and the significance of what today is. Um, as most of you know, the ones that are older than 18, um, this day changed America in many ways. Not all of them for the better. This was the introduction into Big Brother, and I mean in a big way.
Yeah.
And your this was before smartphones. This was whenever we still had flip phones and things like that. So basically, whenever the smartphone generation came up, they already had a lot of things in the works to be able to spy on us, to be able to listen to what we say, and it's just blown up from there. So unfortunately, you know, the United States government decided to sell us safety uh, in the form of being able to watch our every move. And I think a lot of us got a false sense of security from that. And even with all the measures that they put out there, we still see tragedies happen every day. But today, there's been a lot of posts on Facebook, a lot of memes, a lot of remember, never forget, that kind of stuff on there. But many Americans have forgotten how many Americans died and what happened that day. And it doesn't matter who did it. It honestly doesn't matter who did it. The fact that we had Americans die on our own soil, and it was an act of war by whoever it was that did it. And I know that if we get into a debate, some people can say Bush did it. Some people say, the Taliban did it or whoever. It doesn't matter who did it. It's the fact that it actually happened. That's my opinion on it. And I think that we would do better to remember those who died and those who are still dying due to 9/11. We still have firefighters and first responders that have cancer and that are wasting away still to this day. Most of them, we've lost animals, we've lost firefighters, we've lost first responders, police. We've lost countless numbers of people since it happened. So, it's a little somber, but I think it's important that we all remember, and I think it would be a good idea to have us a moment of silence uh, for a little bit in remembrance of 9/11. So let's do a 30-second moment of silence real quick. Um, so, David, tell me, where were you at whenever this happened?
Well, it's actually, I was thinking about that earlier just today, and I was thinking about the years that had gone by, and I still remember it clear as day, despite the years that had gone by. And I was thinking about it, and then I did the math on it. I was 9 years old at the time that this took place. And I had woken up, I believe it was right around like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning for me right here on the West Coast. I want to say I think it was a Tuesday or a Wednesday. And it, I was watching Digimon in the morning, a stupid little kids show. And the news broadcast got taken over. And the next thing you know, I'm watching this whole thing unfold. And it's just to be a 9-year-old kid and remember it that vividly is crazy.
That just shows the impact of
And
what had happened.
yeah, it's insane when you go back and you look at it, and then from that point until now, what we have seen changed based upon the effects of that. I hate to say it, but I almost think the terrorists were successful because the rights we've lost over it and the things that we've lost between that point and now, between the Patriot Act, between the TSA searches, between everything else, and you hit it nail on the head. A false sense of security. TSA, we have airlines now that are coming out and saying that if you're an illegal alien in this country, you don't have to show a passport or show ID in order to get on a plane.
Yep.
And we've got big name companies that are going out and saying that that's the case. We've got borders that are completely unsecured, which we just had a huge win on today. That was good between the Supreme Court that said that if you are an illegal immigrant and you've come here and you've not come to one of our ports of entries, you can be tossed back without obtaining asylum. You have to go to a port of entry. So that's a huge win. And California is going to have to start abiding by that because we had a Ninth Circuit judge that tried to circumvent President Trump on that. But now they're actually going to have to abide by the federal law now that that is the case. So that's going to be huge on that. But just in the last year, we've apprehended 19 terrorists trying to come over the border. And the statistic is 1 in 5 ends up getting through of everybody that comes across. So how many terrorists do we have here? We're just waiting for orders to do something else.
I'm sure right now it's probably countless. I mean, even the ones that get through that we don't know about, we don't know where they are. We don't know what they're up to. We don't know if we don't know if they've hooked up with others. We don't have a count, and that's a scary thing. And the worst part about it is the only ones that end up having to deal with this stuff is the law-abiding citizens of the country. Nowadays you are guilty until proven innocent rather than innocent until proven guilty. And it's a sad day in America whenever they literally circumvent the Constitution and make our lives like that.
Let me see. There was a quote. I'm going to try to look it up. So it was a quote from Benjamin Franklin, and it was said, "Those who desire to give up freedom in order to gain security will not have, nor do they deserve either one."
Yep, that rings true for today.
100% where we're at. And our founding fathers, a lot of people, they don't even think about it. What our founding fathers put into this, what our founding fathers had an understanding for. A lot of people don't understand that the average lifetime for a constitution of any other nation is less than 17 years.
Yep. And ours has lasted for over 270?
Over 270.
Yeah, it's 272 or something like that. Yeah, I mean, it comes down to history repeating itself. I mean, it really does, and that's the whole purpose of what you see the left doing right now with destroying historical statues and getting rid of certain books. And I mean, when was the last time? And David, I don't know if you remember this or not. You're quite a bit younger than me, so you were 9 years old whenever 9/11 happened. I was like 24 years old when this happened, and something like that. And I was actually working. I had a job delivering Schwann's ice cream. I was driving a big, huge ice cream truck for all things. And when this happened, I was actually going door to door, and I started like 7 o'clock in the morning my time, which was just after I hit the road about probably 6:30, and New York. This was in Kansas, by the way, so New York was a few hours ahead of me, and it had just happened. And I get to the first customer's house, and they're like in shock. They're like they didn't want nothing to do with ice cream. They were glued to the TV, and they invited me in, and I kind of got to see the replay of the first plane hitting, or at least the building burning. And I went about my day. I thought maybe it was an accident, and I went to the next house, and then the next house. And while I was standing there delivering ice cream, they had their TV on, and the second plane hit. And the first thought, and I still get goosebumps from this, the first thought that I had was, "Oh shit, we just went to war." And then listening to the radio and everything in the truck the rest of the day, the Pentagon got hit, and then the plane that went down in Pennsylvania, and then of all places, there was a plane that landed, and I don't know if this is documented. I don't know if this is anywhere, but the radio station that I was listening to had come over and basically said that the last United States passenger airplane was about to land in Oakley, Kansas. That was about 60 miles from me. And if you know anything about Kansas, there's not very many major airports there. And it was a 737 or 747. It was a big passenger plane, and it was about to land in the middle of a field. And it flew overhead. It actually passed over us. It flew overhead, and it was being escorted by two fighter jets. I'm not sure what model they were, but I remember driving down the highway, and these things passed over me going to Oakley. And that was the last plane I remember seeing in the air for like a month. And there wasn't any, you didn't see any of the smoke in the air, or the whatever, the trails, contrails. You didn't see any of those in the air for almost a month. Um, and it was a pretty scary thought at that time, even being like 24 years old, not knowing anything about the Patriot groups. I had witnessed Waco and the Ruby Ridge stuff, and Oklahoma City, but this was on a scale that was way bigger than that. So
Yeah, nothing like this we've ever seen.
I just thought we were starting another, or like Pearl Harbor was happening again. That was the first thing that came into my head, and the only reason I remember that was because I had done a report on Pearl Harbor, as my dad had been stationed there for a while. But the fact that it happened here on our watch, essentially, and here's the thing. Okay, I enlisted in the military when I was 18 years old. If this would have happened a year or two sooner, and I had gone through and I had made it through what I was supposed to be, I'd gone through boot camp and made it through, I still would have been enlisted in the military. I mean, it was that close. And I had friends of mine that graduated high school that went on to other things that enlisted right away. It's like Chris Kyle, right? He enlisted in the military right after 9/11 because he was pissed. I mean, September 12th also comes to mind, which is tomorrow. And, there needs to be some kind of, I don't know, national holiday or something like that on 9/11. And
Yeah.
then on 9/12, there needs to be a day of peace. Oop, I'm about to lose David. I don't know what's going on.
I'll be right back.
All right. So, you know, I wish that the United States could get back to the feeling that we felt on September the 12th, 2001, because that day, and for pretty much the next year, every American that was here that felt pride for the country had so many different emotions going through them. They were pissed. They were worried about their brothers and sisters. They were worried about their fellow Americans. They were more respectful that next day and for the next probably 6 months to a year than I've ever seen this country. And I've
Yeah.
seen people that had a lot of pride growing up in a small town in Colorado, but that starting that next day, people were different. I mean, it shocked the entire country. Um, I mean, there's not a whole lot left to say about it. I mean, it happened. Most of us witnessed it. So, you said you were 9 years old. Now, about the same age as you, I was a little older, but not much. I had the kind of the same thing happen to me, except for it was a different event. You probably don't remember seeing. You might not even been old in school yet. You probably weren't. So in the fourth grade, when I was in fourth grade, our um, science and math teacher, his name was Mr. Farron, he had gone to school with Krista McCullough. And for any of you that know who Krista McCullough is, she was one of the first women that was supposed to fly into outer space on the Challenger shuttle. Well, we had all set up, and he had gone to school with her, and so he knew her. He had, had known her for a while, and had conversations with her before this event. Anyway, they set up it was going to be history, so they set up a TV in our classroom. He was very proud, and we sat there and we watched the Challenger take off, and like 60 seconds into the flight, it blew up. That was the same feeling that day that I had on 9/11. But
Yeah.
it was a little bit more impactful with 9/11 because that was obviously more people, but it was still a historic event. It was kind of weird being able to witness history like that more than once. So, anyway, you got anything else you want to add about 9/11?
Well, yeah. In fact, I had just stepped up to go wipe my eyes because they were sweating. Because since then, I've gone through and yeah, I said sweating. That's what I said, stream. But since then, I had gone through and I had watched because they released the phone calls of the people who were on the plane.
Right.
And to hear the phone calls of the people who were on the plane who were doing that, it just started bringing that back. And probably about once every 2 or 3 years, I listen to a few minutes of them. But to listen to the people knowing that they're going into a situation that they're probably not going to make it out,
Right.
giving families the love that they can in those last moments is nuts. And it gut wrenches me because, I mean, I'm 27-year-old kid who has 2 kids of his own and a wife, and I can't even imagine what it would be like to be in that situation. I'd do every damn thing I possibly could to get back to my family, but if that wasn't an option, I'd do every damn thing I could to stop the situation. And the thing that really bothers me right now is that the left is so loud. They're so loud about all of the crap across the board, of crap about turning around and respecting all of the Muslim things, and let's get this on like Ilhan Omar, and then some people did something. Dude, that lady should have been out there like this.
Absolutely.
If,
And you know what?
if that had happened back in 2011, if that had happened at that point in time, that lady would have been roasted so far she'd never get another job in America, ever.
They probably would have shipped her on a boat back over to where she came from, and you'd have never heard from her again. I mean, that's how serious we were right after it happened. And then and the thing is time heals all wounds. But it also, what happens when someone in your family dies, right? Time heals all wounds, but at the same time, certain things start to get forgotten, and it could be someone you were very close to. I remember when my mom died. She died in 2003. 2000. It was 2003, and it was September the 9th. It was almost 2 years. It was 2 years and 2 days. Let's see. It was 2 days before the second year anniversary of 9/11, and um, you know, I can't remember what her voice sounded like. You forget things like that, and it's sad and everything else. But when we have something that's this impactful in this nation, and we just let it slip by. I remember whenever this all happened, and like a week or so after it happened, they stopped airing the footage of it. That angered me because I knew that if they stopped airing footage of it, it would start to seep back into people's minds, right? They would start to forget about it. And then you had several country artists like Alan Jackson, and a few other ones that came out with songs. Toby Keith came out with songs remembering the event, and some of them were censored on certain radio stations. They wouldn't play them. And I'm like, seriously? This is America, man. I mean, something bad just happened. We can't just ignore it. And, there was a breakdown this and there's a breakdown that. And it blew my mind, the fact that we just had 3,000 citizens in this country die. And we watched people jumping out of buildings to prevent them, from catching on fire. And they're worried about censoring somebody's freaking song and playing the shit on TV. I mean, come on.
Well, and this is, I was actually having this conversation a couple days ago, and I was talking about country music, and I had actually made the point of, I don't hear any real country music anymore. And some of my friends, they were telling me, they're like, well, that's because you're not listening to it. The stuff that's played on the mainstream radio, it's not country. But the point that I was making on it is the mainstream is not giving you God, country, patriotism, love, goodness for your neighbor, anything else. I mean, we all know what country music is. Once Tesla ends up making the self-driving truck, it's only going to be a matter of time before the guy's truck self-drives off.
Right? His dog will be following him soon.
Pretty much.
You know what happens when you play a country song backwards? The guy gets everything back.
But
No, the funny thing is, and I don't know how much you listen to country music, and certain people are different. I listen to it on and off. I look up YouTube videos and all kinds of different stuff and different artists. And I tell you what, there's one young kid out there that seems to get it. And if you get a chance to listen to Luke Combs, and I'm not talking about their stuff he plays on the radio. I'm talking about like his concerts and stuff, the stuff that doesn't make radio. You listen to that dude's songs, and that dude gets it. There's a song called Outlaw. And if you listen to that, he did it with Upchurch the Redneck. That was how he kind of got on the mainstream. And he did a song with Upchurch. It was a kind of a background song. And Upchurch did, most of the song, but he did the chorus. And that kind of took off. Well, next thing you know, Luke Combs is growing and he's blown up. Well, the stuff that literally he's like the Garth Brooks of the 2000s, essentially. I mean, the guy's had more #1 hits and everything else. And if you listen to his interviews and everything else, the guy is legit. I mean, he's like your age, David. I mean, he may be a little younger than you, but he gets it. And right now he's not singing a ton of like America Pride songs, but if he were to do it, it would be all over the damn radio. And I wish he would, but it's most of the stuff he's playing right now are party songs and heartfelt stuff like that, which sells. And I get it, but if you listen to some of the stuff that's not on radio, it does really well. And there's a few other ones out there. A lot of the good ones have retired or died. That's the problem.
yeah.
So.
Well, yeah, you see it all over the place with the people that are coming along and creating new music. I mean, Taylor Swift, prime example. That girl had everything in the beginning. Like, she was a teenage girl's dream.
Teenage boy's dream, too. And now you look
at it now. Well, yeah, from a teenage boy's standpoint, I mean, shoot, I'm sure there was more than 1 or 2 bathrooms that had a slug on the wall, if you know what I mean. But at the end of the day, it seems to me, just as an outsider, that we have a system that is promoting people of only a certain value.
Yep.
And only a certain ideology. And it was very interesting because Ben Shapiro had done a special where he had talked about some of this, where he had actually gone and interviewed film directors, movie directors, and people who were big-time hotshots. And they didn't take the time to actually research who he was. They just sat down for an interview, and he had asked multiple times, don't you ever feel an obligation to keep people who are going to be bad for society out of the way? Like people who have different values that are going to take us back in time. And he actually got these people to go through and say, yeah, I absolutely do. And we turn around and vet them as much as possible. And we cut out all the people that disagree with us.
Right.
And we don't give them a platform. And so it's why you see these places like Hollywood and the MTV Music Awards and music overall that are just like popping with all of these crazy individuals. And that's not ending anytime soon.
Well, and you know, it's funny you mentioned that, because if you look at CNN's really bad about this. So if and a lot of these award shows are too. So, you know, there's people out there that are still conservatives. But the problem is these groups like CNN, the award shows, stuff like that, they don't do live things anymore. And the reason that they don't like to do live things is because they cannot control what comes out of someone's mouth. And there are people out there that, you know, they'll be interviewed and you know, CNN thinks that they're going to say one thing, and the next thing you know, they're blown out of the water because what they expected to be heard is not what was said. And next thing you know, they got pie on their face. And it happens with, you know, anything that's live. And I'll give you an example with the Taylor Swift thing. Who the hell was it that came on stage? It was
Kanye, Mother, Father, West.
Exactly. And, you know, I mean, that's a live thing. And, you know, they didn't have any choice. They couldn't edit it. I mean, he came on the friggin' stage and upstaged her. And that was supposed to be her moment. And he was like, fuck you. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to make I'm going to make an ass out of myself. But at the same time, you're not going to get the spotlight. And
well, and honestly, I am, there's two people that I was shocked by. Two people that I cannot stand generally overall that I actually now have some respect for. And that is Kanye West and Justin Bieber, which ironically, Justin Bieber, when you look up 50 of the world's most influential women, according to ABC, Justin Bieber is number 7.
Well, you know,
he's listed as a woman. It's great.
He is kind of girly. There's one song of his that I actually listen to, and I don't listen to it on my own because I couldn't stand it. But my wife loves the damn song, and I'll listen to it. And it's not all him. It's the Mexican song. What the hell is it called?
Despacito?
Despacito. I actually dig that song a little bit, and I can listen to it a couple times in the car.
Despacito. I mean, you don't know what the hell it's saying, but you know it sounds kind of sexy. You would think it would get you laid in your college years. I mean, it's old times.
You know, it's a good song. I mean, I think personally, the guy, the Hispanic dude singing behind him sounds better than he does. But hey, you know, who am I? You know, I'm just a drummer. You know, I ain't got a voice for shit. So now, if you want me to do like a voiceover or something like that, I can do some Chinese stuff. Oh, we take over your country one nail salon at a time. Oh, we love you a long time. No, but it's the country's changed so much. I mean, you know, back in the 90s, we had the Dixie.
Make this for less in our country.
Yeah. Oh, our country lasts a lot better. You know, back in the 90s, and this may be, yeah, it's probably your generation, I guess. I hated them, but we had the Dixie Chicks. You remember the Dixie Chicks?
No, that was before my time.
Okay, so I'm getting old. So there was the Dixie Chicks, and the Dixie Chicks, they got in trouble because they went political. And basically, Toby Keith came out with a song, and the Dixie Chicks didn't like it, and they said as much, and next thing you know, they disappeared. And that's the way it needs to be. And, you know, country music used to not ever get political. Never. And it was because it was like a, you know, the death stroke to them. And lately there's been a few more of them come out. Like there's been some country artists that have come out against guns. And who the hell was it? Somebody came out, I think it was Hillary. Or no, it wasn't Hillary. Somebody came out, and Dolly Parton's been feuding back and forth. And Dolly Parton, as most people know, is an old school country artist. She's been doing this shit since the 60s and 70s. Big old boobies. That's what most people remember. Anyway.
You see, I wasn't from that generation, but I know about them big old boobies.
Yeah, them big old boobies. So the first thing I ever even knew about Dolly Parton was she was in a movie, I shit you not, and this is a funny story, but The first drive-in movie theater I ever went to. I got snuck in a trunk of a car. My aunt Donna snuck me in, and
I
I
didn't
was
know you
like,
were Mexican.
I was packed in like one. I tell you that. So they sneak me in. I'm like maybe 6 years old. I mean, I'm young, and they'd gone to a double feature at this drive-in theater. And one of the movies that and Dolly Parton was in it was The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. I had no clue what the fuck a whore was, no idea, but I knew Burt Reynolds was in it, and I knew that Dolly Parton was in it, and it actually ended up being a pretty good movie, and there was no nudity, which now that I look back on it, I'm going, that was kind of a shitty movie. But when you see big boobies, you're like, is Dolly gonna get naked? What's going on here? No, but the thing is with like the
I
older
just want to
artists,
clarify for a minute, real quick,
yeah,
because the ladies out there offended by us talking about big boobies. You got to understand, God put this in us
yes, they did.
because those big boobies mean lots of milk. Okay, that's so our growth. It's nothing sexual whatsoever.
How do you
Continue, D.
think I got to be 6'2"? And you're at least that, right?
Yeah, I'm 6'3", 6'4" when I actually stand up and don't slouch.
Right, there you go. So without those big old boobies, we would not be the men that we are today. So I praise the big old boobies. I'm trying to lighten up the mood a little bit. We had kind of a somber start to the show. So um, anyway, so let's switch gears a little bit. So um, you and me both, we're both in Patriot groups. We've done a lot of different things. We and you've done some events together. You spoke at events that I've spoken at, and I kind of see a kindred friendship between the two of us. And we've done some other things, like David did my awesome intro on here, so I have some favoritism I like to show David every once in a while. But there's been a lot of, and it's not just in one place; it's all over the country right now. We notice that there's a lot of division, there's a lot of separation, there's a lot of arguments, there's a lot of just infighting across the board. And we witnessed some stuff recently, and I'm not going to mention any names, any groups, anything like that, because it doesn't do us any good to call anybody out. It's just kind of stupid. It's childish. So, but I have some opinions, and David's going to share his opinions on it, on what I think and what he thinks we can do differently. So, after what I've witnessed over the last few weeks, I think, and this was with a national group. Again, I'm not going to mention any names. Um, the problem with national patriot groups, the ones that are run by someone that may not live in your area, and this doesn't go out to everybody that's in these national groups or that runs them, but if there's an issue in your group, let them handle it. Let them handle it internally. Don't get involved in it, because what we've seen, it's disastrous. It becomes a complete, lack of a better word to say, it's a complete clusterfuck. And
Yep.
the problem is there's too many people that risk too much to have to find another home. And by that I mean build another group, find another group. And the people that are in these groups, stay local, folks. Stay with the people that that you trust, and don't let anybody else run your lives, especially if they're out of state. It just doesn't do you any good. And I've kind of learned my lesson a little bit. I'm sure that the other people that I'm talking about have learned their lesson a little bit. Some of the people I'm talking about probably haven't yet. But I got a feeling there's a reckoning coming in certain areas, and they're going to learn it. So you give me your insight. And one more thing I want to throw in there too is I believe the stuff that we're seeing, the infighting and the bitching and moaning and everything else, 90% of it is about politics. And the funny thing is a lot of stuff I cover is political, and a lot of the things David covers is political. So when I say that, it's like the nail in the coffin kind of thing. But I don't. If you've ever followed me and you've ever watched my shows, I never call anybody out. And the reason I do that is because I'm smart enough to know that if I do that, that it's just going to cause a big problem across the board. Now, if I talk in and say things in general, and I'm not pinpointing one certain thing, it's a lot easier for other groups to understand, I guess, kind of where I'm going, because not everybody needs to know everybody's business, and I fully believe that. So, if you can, and I know that there's a group in the state that I came up from Alaska from, called the 31st Legion, and I got to hand it to Marcus, my a good buddy Marcus. That group runs flawlessly, and I'll tell you why. They concentrate on training, they concentrate on doing things to better themselves, and they have certain guidelines that they follow, and it's not necessarily a military type structure. They're all friends, and most of the people that do the training with them are all in their AO, and AO is area of operations for those who don't know what that means. Meaning that they're within all of them are within probably about an hour of each other, so they can get to each other's place if there's a major problem. They can all assemble pretty quick. And what the best part about it is someone may have a weekend where they come over and they all barbecue, or they may go out to a park and all hang out, and it's all close enough that they can do that. So with that said, David, you kind of give us your opinion on what you've seen over the last, well, since you've been in.
It's been about 2 years now, and in the time that I've been with Patriot groups, I've seen. And first off, I want to say, I've met people that have greatly improved my lives. I've met people like Tank here who have really improved my lives. I've met people within the zones that I was in, and people who overall. I mean, there's a lot of great people within the Patriot movement. Really, for me, what it comes down to and what I look at is, I was 6 years old. I was a weird kid because I like to learn things. The very first time I ever read Art of War was when I was 6 years old. I read it again at 9 years old. I read it at 11 years old. I read it at 12 years old. Art of War has a saying in it of know your enemy and know yourself, and you can win the ends of 1,000 battles.
Mm-hmm.
And the problems that I see with a lot of these big groups is, take for instance in the last group that I was in, I didn't hear from National in the 2 years that I was in there. They didn't know I was alive until we had a problem. And then when they did know I was alive, it was like they didn't care, and everybody had already done votes and stuff, and they didn't care about that. We had done through every actual operation that we had done historically as a group to make sure everything was up on the up and up. And then when they came in, they said, nope, this isn't it. And so we were looking at losing possibly 4 zones over it versus losing 2 people. And by making that choice and getting involved, I don't know National, which means I can't know myself, which means I can't know my group. I can't know our weaknesses. I can't know our flaws. I can't know where our strengths are. So how do you expect us to actually fight a battle and fight a war that we're going to win if we're in a situation to where we don't even know who we are? And we don't know who our leadership is.
Yep.
Without leadership and without knowing who you are, you're literally lost. And so that's the big thing for me, is I think these smaller groups, when you look back historically at militias, which the groups that I'm involved in, none of them are militias, but when you look at militias, 1776 and then on, you look at small groups, and the reason why militias are so effective is because you got nowhere to run. Me in my hometown, if you're coming for me and you're gunning for me, the people behind me are my wife and my kids. Now, knowing my wife, she's probably going to be in front of me, but that's besides the point. And at the end of the day, when you see it, we've got nowhere to run. We've got nowhere to hide. There's no other lands to claim. We already have pretty good track of being able to say there's nowhere other than America we can run to. And the biggest problem that I see is we have, between the time of 1776 to now, look at the freedoms that they were fighting for. They were fighting for free speech. They were fighting for gun rights. They were fighting for the ability to not have their property searched and seized. They were fighting for the ability of free and expedient trials. They were fighting for the rights for the first 10 bills, for the first 10 of our constitutional rights. And guess what? Those rights are the same rights we're now fighting for now.
Yep.
It's just like Tang said, history is 100% repeating itself. And the biggest problem that I see with these groups across the board is we have infighting, and we have people who are starting things, saying one thing or another. Like, take, for instance, I love Trump. I love who he is as a person. I love what he's done for this country. Do I agree with Trump? No. His boneheaded move on the bump stocks was an absolute violation of my Second Amendment rights, 100% across the board. His loose lips when it came to the sound suppressors for firearms is straight out of movie paraphernalia bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely nothing of it. Your sound suppressed 223 is literally right underneath a jet engine taking off. It is not quiet by any means whatsoever. It is not like the movies. It's not like Hitman. James Bond is a lie, and now it's a woman.
Yeah. Yeah. Times are changing, man. Times are changing.
And when you go through and you break it all down and you look at these things, no one person is going to save us. And so Tank and I, we were discussing this a little bit earlier, and he was mentioning that politics is the root of all of our problems. And I agree it is, but I also agree that politics is the problem that we have to solve. It's not a problem to throw under the rug and say we don't have to do anything about, because the problem with politics is how we lose our rights. Politics is how we gain our rights. And for far too long, we've been on the defensive as patriot groups as a whole. Take, for instance, perfect example, prime examples. We have bills right now that are being set forth for red flag laws. We have bills right now that are being set forth for sound suppressor laws. We have bills right now that just go in the freaking thousands. The problem is we get focused on the thousands of bills, and when we stop one, there's 99 more that pop up.
Yep. I think, what was it?
We have to
what
start
was it,
focusing on.
Give me an example. What was it, like 10,000 laws in California over the last year that they've passed? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, there's a book too. There's a book called 3 Felonies a Day. It's the average amount of felonies that a person commits every single day. If you took, and I'm paraphrasing probably terribly, so don't hold it too far against me, but according to the book, it would take you something like 300 lifetimes just to read all of the laws in the books. In Red Bluff, for instance, over a town or two over from where I live, in Red Bluff, if you go there, they still have a law on the books that states that if you steal a horse, you will be hung. It's still on the books.
Yeah,
yet nobody's going to enforce it. We don't have those laws.
There's so many weird laws. If you look at, there's actually a book of weird laws. I shit you not. I've actually seen it. You can go down to the library or Amazon or whatever, but there's like Arkansas, you can't like have sex with the lights on or some weird goofy shit. And there's actually like it tells you what kind of what the fine is and all kinds of other stuff. It's like you can't have sex with your leg in the air.
Well,
Okay.
I'm going to be honest. My favorite law of those out of all of them is the one that says you cannot salt the railroad tracks with the intention of baiting the cows onto it. Because there was dumb motherfucker that did that.
Well, yeah, here's the thing. It's like if you look at like even okay, me being a little older than you, you might not have had this the safety. Okay, let's put it this way. When I used to stand in the front seat of my parents' car, right? They had no safety belts, things like that. And over the years, people have started basically bubble wrapping their kids, right? And if you look at like some of these bottles and everything else that you get, there's like weird things, and it's not laws, but it's weird things. They say, whatever you do, don't put a Tylenol up your ass. I mean, literally, they can go shit like that, or don't stick an earplug in your nose, and you're thinking to yourself, okay, who's the idiot that tried that? And the laws are based on that because they wouldn't write a law if someone hadn't tried it. It's like the rodeo thing, right? And I always go back to this when we have a debate like this. In a rodeo, how do you think they got started? And I'll tell you exactly how it got started. There was two drunk cowboys. They're sitting on a fence, looking over a whole bunch of cattle. One guy elbows the other guy and goes, "You see that 2,000-pound piece of pissed off hamburger?" The other guy goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I bet I can ride that son bitch for 8 seconds." The other guy goes, "You're on." And that's how it started. I'm telling you, that's how rodeo
I
started.
bet you that is.
I mean, it didn't start in the mainstream by any chance. So, the laws that we have on the books, whether they're legit laws, whether they're stupid laws, whether they're laws that should have never been written, it shows you the lack of common sense in this country. And unfortunately, the lawmakers know that there's a lack of common sense, so they're going to put whatever the hell they want to on there. And the idiots that are out there that don't read the damn things will be like, okay, that's like Nancy Pelosi going, "Oh, well, we have to pass the bill to see what's in it." Who the fuck does that? They write the stuff so fast and they never have a chance to read it.
This is the thing that blows me away. Because we have a system, like in the state of California right now, they're literally putting on the bill that you can now vote at 16. This is what they're trying to get passed now. And so here's my problem with it. You tell me that I am not responsible enough at 16 to own a firearm, not even a long gun.
And barely old enough to drive.
You tell me that barely old enough to drive, but you tell me that I can have a vote in deciding the entire course of the nation when I'm not responsible. So either you are responsible or you're not responsible, and there's no double standard. Mm-hmm. And when you break it down further and you see the way that they're treating people, I mean, honestly, if our founding fathers saw this, they'd be rolling over in their graves. I can almost guarantee you Thomas Jefferson would pin up a bill. If you're too fucking stupid to be able to live in society without dealing with the laws we've already laid down, that's on you. And then that would solve everything. Like a simple law that basically says, yeah, if you can't figure this out on your own, that's on you. You've got freedom. Well, if you jack somebody else's life up, that's on you.
There needs to be a law that's written, and it needs to be about the Constitution. And it needs to say, and Trump could do this. And whether or not he would get congressional support over it or not, I don't know. But he could literally write a law and send us back to the colonial times. And what I mean by that is, with the amount of laws that we got across the board, one law could change it all. And it's just it'd have to be inclusive of everything that's been written since basically since the Constitution was written. And all I'd have to say would be all laws since the year after the Constitution are null and void. And I mean, it literally could, if you found somebody to take, if you had enough constitutionalists in Congress or in the House, they could pass that. And the problem is as well as I do, how many of those congressmen and women, how many of those people do you actually think believe in the Constitution? I guarantee you that less than 10% do.
Yep. Well, and there are some problems with that, too, that make it more troublesome. Like, I believe it was the 14th Amendment that gave slaves their liberty.
Mm-hmm.
And we fought the Civil War over that. And I want to say it was either the 14th or 16th. Please don't kill me, stream. Right. But...
Well, I mean,
obviously, I think that's stay in there, but there's ones like property taxes and stuff like that never should. Those are insane.
Well, the thing that I get a kick out of is if you look at the taxes, and this is relevant to me because I have to file taxes before I can buy a house. I haven't filed in a few years, so this could be interesting. My address is not where I live now. It's in California still. Now, anyway, there's all kinds of things that could be changed, but with the stroke of a pen. And either Trump doesn't have the balls to do it, and I don't see that's the issue, or he understands that if he were to write something like that, that it would never make it through. And the thing I'm wondering now, keep in mind, anything Trump would write would be federal law. It would not be state law. and there are differences between the two, and each state is allowed to govern their own, and the federal part of it, is to govern them. So, each state would have to be, you'd have to find constitutionalists in each state for it to make it a legit thing. But, and I go back to, constitutionalists and stuff that's in Congress and people who believe in the Constitution. Even the guy that I really had good hopes for, Dan Crenshaw, let me down over the red flag stuff. Now, this got brought to my attention a few days ago. So the red flag laws have been on the books for a long time, and just not every state has been instituting them. And we had a huge blow up over the red flag laws and all this kind of stuff, but it needs to happen. I mean, it really needs to happen. We need to keep pushing on that, because whether they've been in there for a long time or not, they need to go away, and they need to go away like yesterday. And there was already somebody this last week that was arrested for having a bump stock, and he was in Texas. So, that's something that Trump impacted right there. Now, I don't know if the guy was legally allowed to own firearms or not, but, everything comes back to get us. And, how long has it been since he banned the bump stock? Yep.
All I gotta say on that is, Patriots, don't worry about a bump stock. I'm not telling you to do anything, but like rubber bands, pretty cool.
Well, I can. If you know what you're doing with your rifle, you don't need a bump stock anyway. You can.
You don't. I mean, honestly,
your left hand is there for a reason.
I wasn't too sore on him, but the problem that I have, most people don't understand, and I will reiterate for anybody that doesn't understand. Our Second Amendment right is not there to protect yourself. It is not there to protect your family. It is not there to protect your barbecue. It is not there to protect your dog. It is there to protect you from your government. Because at the end of the day, the government is the one who is coming for you. Well, tyranny has come to every nation that has ever tried to take the guns.
I'll agree on 50% of that.
All right, fair. Go.
The other 50% of it, the other part of the Second Amendment was the security of the nation. And that meant from foreign invaders. That meant from, it could have been anything. It could have been our government. It could have been foreign invaders. But so you have it 50% right, at least how I understand it anyway. And that's the other 50%. It's from tyranny from our own government and from actors here on stateside. And it's also from shit like Pearl Harbor. I mean, if they would have made the mainland, it might have been a whole different story. But Hawaii's always been against guns anyway. So the only ones over there that really had guns were the military.
There'd be a lot more dots on those red dotted bastards if they'd made the mainland.
Right. Especially nowadays. I know guys that got 50 cals that would just be itching to do that shit. But
that's not a dot. That's just like that's a red spectacle. Let's put it that way.
Well, it's a target. I mean, you're running around in a plane with a big red dot on it. And I mean, that's like a target out, 50 yards. I mean, hello. Let's paint a target on your back. Yeah, we know you're a kamikaze, but we'll shoot your ass down before you make it that far. I don't know. The country needs to get back to normal times. James Madison, I know a lot of people are kind of upset with him because he left the president, or he left the administration, but he went on an interview and he wrote a book. And what I like about the book is he didn't throw Trump under the bus, and that's the best part about it. And in his words, he thinks that right now, the time that we're living in, is everybody is on high alert for everything. We're on, and I'm not talking about like attacks. I'm talking about, as soon as someone posts something political or someone posts something you don't agree with, or, it could be anything. I mean, you could walk into a freaking store with a Trump hat on, or, you're getting attacked, and everybody's on high alert 24/7, instead of, going about your day, like a normal person would, or like a normal human being would. You're looking for a reason to get pissed, and you're looking for a reason to be a victim. And the country has turned into a nation of victims, and we have to find a way to come out of that. If we don't, what the next step is. The next step is a lot of bad shit, and it's happened.
Well, the problem that I see is looking over our nation and looking over what's happened. California just recently put towards a bill that you had until I believe it was August 14th that you could actually write it on. The time is closed. It's over. But it was a bill that was actually going to change the way that children are taught in the state of California. And what they're going to start teaching is that capitalism is a method of racism that was born of this country, and that socialism is good. You're going to have your children in school learning this, and then when they grow up, they're going to learn all of that and vote based upon that. Well, the problem with our country right now is ever since the women's rights movement, which I had no problem with whatsoever, I'll make that clear now. I think it was good to be able to do it. But at the end of the day, it was manipulated to be used by corporations for extra profit. Why do you think that the cost of a vehicle is gone exponentially up? Everything has gone up. So now you don't have a right to be able to turn around and have your wife stay home and take care of kids. I work 80 hours a week for that privilege to have my wife at home with our kids. And most people can't do that because most people can't even get a job to where they'll let them work 80 hours a week, let alone even 40. So the problem is when you break it down and you see this, we're entrusting our children to the government for the government to raise with all of these liberal teachers who are basically Bernie Sanders in a different set of spectacles telling your kid that he's great and everything should be free. And it was great in Venezuela, but, America messed it up because it's bad, I don't know.
We take over your
Italian. He's a fucking dick.
We take over your country one nail salon at a time, and we bring communism with us. I don't know.
For Bernie Sanders fans, all I gotta say on Bernie Sanders fans, this fucker's got 3 houses. That 3 don't stand for 3%.
I know.
I'm gonna tell you that much right now. That 3 stands for 3 fucking mansions while he's sitting here lecturing you about how you should be more giving when he literally has not passed anything in his entire freaking career and freeloaded on American society in Iran.
He didn't have his first job till he was 44, and then it was in Congress. I mean, it was political, whatever the hell it was. But it shows you how bad and how easy it is to make a living in politics if you know what to say, when to say it, and who to hoodwink. Is the best way to put it. And look at Al Sharpton. What has that dude done for this country? Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson.
Al Sharpton's an interesting case. I not a good interesting case, but an interesting case. So Al Sharpton actually got his rise in the first fiasco. Al Sharpton was a lie to begin with, because he had this girl who claimed that she got raped by a police officer. They ended up throwing this police officer through the mud. I'm not gonna say it. I think he killed himself over this whole instance, and then ended up coming out clean. I'm not saying that because I'm not 100% sure. It's been a little while since I heard it. But I think that's the case. Look it up. Tell me if I'm wrong. But don't say I said it. Say I think it.
Well, the problem with guys like Al Sharpton. Okay, for one, I'm going to go back to the taxes. He owes $3 million in taxes or some crap, and he's still walking around in the country. If you or me owed $3 million in taxes, we wouldn't be doing this. We wouldn't be on Facebook or whatever, huh? Who?
Look at Bundy.
Oh, yeah.
Look at what happened. Ted Bundy?
Yep.
Look at those guys out over there. They didn't pay their taxes after the government ended up raising their taxes. They didn't end up paying the taxes that weren't justified to begin with. And they were trying to take all the farms. And now, I'm gonna
Oh,
hate on Trump a little bit, but I'm not gonna hate on Trump a little bit.
by the way,
I'll go here for a second.
by the way, that wasn't Ted Bundy. That was the murderer. You said Ted Bundy. Just want to clarify that.
Blame it on the rum. It was a different Bundy, not that Bundy. I'm sorry, folks, but no. When you go through and this is why you need people to fact check you, like people who are not who are honest, not like Media Matters or Snopes, who basically
Right.
says that their cat's right and
That's
everybody else
true.
is wrong.
That's true.
But
You just changed history, brother.
but
Ted Bundy owed taxes.
I know, right?
we're gonna be on like extra,
Yeah.
like next week. Ted Bundy owed taxes. What? Now breaking.
Hey, I hope they pay me for this story. That's all I gotta say. Now breaking.
Yeah,
One of the things
go ahead.
Trump reported this morning, this is disturbing to me. And I'll say it's disturbing, and I'll preface this by he has not lost any of my respect or support. He is doing whatever he's got to do to win the re-election. I understand that. But by the same token, he is asking the Fed to lower the interest rates to 0 or lower.
That would be phenomenal, actually.
I'm just going to give you guys. It would be phenomenal, theoretically, but the problem is America can't handle that.
No,
and
I
they've
know.
already proved it.
I know. And
Because back in 2008, this is the exact thing we had happen. We had an interest rate that went down below 2%. It was like 1.5 or even 0 at a certain point in time. And then we had people getting themselves into houses they couldn't afford because
Right.
they're thinking, dude, it's free money. It's going to go up. Of course I'm going to buy into this. And the banks don't make any money, and they can't do that. And so then what ends up happening is kapoosh.
Yep.
Everybody's gone. There's nothing you can do about it. Your home is upside down. You're paying on something until you give it back to the bank. And when you look at how drastically bad that was for the people who were in, I mean, the government, that was the worst thing they could have done is give the banks a bailout. They gave the banks a bailout instead of the citizens.
I tell you what I think about that. So now keep in mind whenever the housing crisis happened, and I'm not an expert on this, so bear with me as I mumble through this. But is the housing?
This is not Ted Bundy,
right? When the housing crisis happened, and everybody lost their homes, and everybody went homeless, and all this bad shit happened. Okay, there's a lot of factors right now in the country that we are better off now than we were then. And when I say that, look at the oil prices right now. I mean, I'm paying $2.60 for gas, and back then, I know that the oil prices hit like $4 a gallon, and that was in states not California. And so the difference is we've become a lot more reliant on our own stuff. With Trump in there, and he started doing all kinds of different things. And the one thing is if he's got some aces in the hole, and we have our own oil. He's getting ready to open up other areas to where we can drill oil. There's one of them specifically here in Alaska. If he opens up Anwar and they start drilling for oil there, Alaska is going to be flush, like super flush. But and I kind of like the idea of dropping interest rates because I'm in the middle of buying a house. It would be nice to be able to what the hell just happened?
I don't know.
I didn't touch anything, I swear to God. It's like your screen just like totally like wigged out. Hold on. What the yeah, you just got huge. You got
Dude,
big.
half of my face is awesome. That's all I gotta say.
Yours got big and mine got small, and I didn't touch anything. That's interesting. There we go. We'll shrink you down a little bit. Bring you
By
back
the
to
way,
this
while you're
planet.
talking about that, the House Dems just today, during the House, they ended up passing a resolution to stop all offshore drilling. That was today's news. They're trying to take away anything you can possibly do to make a buck in this country and stomp it out. People don't understand. I'm going to do a breakdown. I read way too much. I'm idiot nerd when it comes to that crap. So I read financial stuff, and as far as markets goes, I'm not a financial investor, so I will tell you exactly what my secret is after this. But understand, if you lose everything, which you probably will, that's on you.
Okay.
But I've come to find out in the last 4 days of trading that what you have to do is you have to go through and look at every possible stock. And then you have to go through and look at all of the technicals. You have to analyze it perfectly, look at the news, and then make a decision on what you're going to do. The decision that you're going to do, you should make the exact opposite decision, because otherwise you're fucked. I found that out exactly.
That's sound advice. That's sound advice. You know, it's well, you know, and the thing is here's the thing. Here's the thing I've learned. If the Democrats have their hand in it, stay the fuck out of it. If
Yep.
if it's because I guarantee you they're going to find a way to fuck it up. And it's like Netflix. I'll give you an example of Netflix. My mother-in-law has stocks in Netflix, and as soon as Obama came out and said he was going to be a part of Netflix somehow or another, he's going to be a director or whatever the hell it's going to be, Netflix's stock dropped. I'm like, I wonder why that happened.
Cancel that shit immediately.
Well, it's because the thing is, and you know, these and this is everybody. Okay, Hollywood, country artists, or musical acts, you know, businesses. Look at how good Chick-fil-A is doing. Right, Chick-fil-A is rocking it, and it's because they give a good product. They're respectful to their clientele, and you know they uphold their values, right? They close on Sundays, they go to church. You know that's what Chick-fil-A does. Another restaurant that does something similar, they don't go to church, but if you've ever been to In-N-Out, have you ever been to In-N-Out?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
bet your ass.
Have you ever looked on the bottom of their sodas or their fries? There's always a Bible verse.
Bible verses always.
Yep. And you know what? Those guys kick ass. And they're in California, of all places, right? That's where they were based from. And they kick ass. And you know what? They pay their employees very well. If you're a manager of a In-N-Out place, you end up making like 150 G's a year. I mean,
with stock options.
Yes. I mean, they pay them very well, and they're doing very well. And guess what? That is a conservative company. Now, you take Nike, you take all these other companies that are shooting themselves in the foot every chance they get, Target, Walmart, and you start going against American values, guess what happens? Your shit starts to disappear. You start to go downhill. How many stores of Walmart closed in the last 10 years? They've closed a ton.
Point of privilege.
Go ahead with your point of privilege. That's accepted. I was wondering if you were going to bring one of those up. That's fucking hilarious.
Oh, I had to. So Nike just lost $3.4 billion because of their Kaepernick bullshit.
Thanks, Kaepernick.
All I gotta say is, if you kneel to our American flag, America will not support you.
Fucking
you are
right.
better off in communist China.
Fucking
right now.
Yep.
Go.
And you know what? And that's the way we all need to, you know, I hate the word boycott, because, you know, I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of people out there that are going to be like, "Oh, I'm never going to Walmart again." And you know, they're all rednecks. And next week we're going to see a picture of them with their ass hanging out, wearing fishnet stockings, a camouflage cap, and a safety vest, walking through Walmart. And it's just the way it is. It's American nature. I mean, we may not go there and get as much stuff, but we're going to go there and raise some hell. And so, like the guy that went in there with a gun on his hip. I mean, the guy went in there not bothering anybody. I don't know if you know why the cops are called. Did you read the article on that guy? So
I believe he was doing an audit.
No.
And he was doing an audit as far as the Second Amendment goes, but that's at least the secondhand news. From the original video, it looked like he was just carrying his weapon normal.
No, this is a different guy. You're talking about the guy with the AR-15. I'm talking about the guy with
I'm talking about the guy with the pistol.
Okay,
yeah.
No. So the reason the cops got called, so this guy's walking around and he had a cart full of shit. I mean, he had, you know, he wasn't doing an audit. As far as I know, he wasn't doing an audit. But somebody seen him with the gun on his on his hip, and instead of saying, you know, there's a guy in here that's making me uncomfortable, you know, can you please come in and pick him up or ask him not to do that? Instead of doing that, the caller called in and said, there's a guy with a gun in Walmart, and hung up. and it created a huge response by the cops. And not only did it do that, but it put everybody's life in Walmart at that time in danger, because now you've got cops that are on a heightened sense of emergency. You've got cops that don't know what the fuck the situation is going in, and they all went in, apparently. Now, we didn't see that in the video, but apparently they all went in guns drawn. One guy, I'll tell you right now, cops are pretty safe with their weapons, but you get one guy that's running in there and say he trips on something or steps on something wet and falls down. um, all bets are off as to what happens. Gun goes off. Next thing you know, everybody's firing.
Dude, I've watched an episode of Donut Operator. I kid you freaking not. Like, he's a cool cat, and he's got an episode to where this cop is going in, and the dog barks next to him, and he shoots his female cop partner in the back.
Yeah, I've seen that, actually.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about. I mean, you are on high alert at any point in time. Here's the thing. Police officers do not use safeties. Safeties are a danger once you know what you're doing with your weapon. Not keeping a one in the chamber is a danger when you don't know what you're doing with the weapon. You have this arm out of the clay. You got your baby in your hand. You can't use that arm to rack your slide. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
So this right here, this is your safety. And if you turn around and just do not respect your safety, you are jacked. Well, you are not going to get anything taken care of.
And I know most of the weapons that most of the cops carry, and most of them don't actually even have a safety on the damn gun, except for the trigger safety. And the trigger trigger safety.
It, man.
No, they're carrying. A lot of them are carrying Springfield now. It depends on how old. Yeah,
XDs.
Yeah, a lot of them are actually, because they're consistent. Cops in some certain areas are allowed to carry whatever they feel comfortable carrying. As long as it meets the standards, like drop safety and all that good crap. So like the sheriffs from my hometown, last time I was there, I ran into a guy that I went to high school with, and they're carrying Colts. They're carrying Colt, they're like a 1911, but they're just a Colt, semi-automatic pistol. He gave me the number, he rattled it off, but I can't remember what it was. But every department's different. The major metropolitan areas mostly carry Glock or SIG. And most of those guns, they don't have an actual physical safety on them anymore. It's a trigger safety, which is a hinge trigger, or a grip safety, which is what the XD has, which is why some of them are adopting that. Your palm has to be on the gun for it to fire. And I like that. That's why I buy a lot of Springfields. It actually feels comfortable in my hand, too.
Yeah, I don't mind that. I mean, even with the Glock, it technically has that safety. I just don't know how comfortable I am as far as the dual trigger thing being your only safety. Because, I mean, even if a kid gets a hold of that, your safety is nil.
Here's the gun this is the gun, David. This is the gun I carry concealed, at least here. So this is M&P Shield. I don't know if you can see it. This one actually does have a safety on it. But when I carry it, you carry a shield also. So when I carry it, the safety's off, because it does have a you can see that's hinged. So whenever it has to be, you can't just accidentally fire it. But when it's home and it's not in my waistband or in my pocket, the safety's on, because I don't want someone coming in that I don't know, which I would never have, but I don't want someone coming in and just picking up and, hey, what's this? Bang.
Well, and I think it differs on circumstance too. Like, for instance, me, I've got a kid who's soon to be 5 and a kid who's soon to be 3. So for me, that added safety, I'm normally extremely cautious about my firearms.
Right.
So is my wife. But in the instance of kids being kids, I mean, dude, I've already had my kid pick my lock on my door already. Like, I was a dick when I was a kid, and I was that much of a dick. All right, side story, because this is funny. My parents didn't want me when I was a kid. I was probably 7 years old. They did not want me watching too much TV or playing video games. And they drilled a freaking hole through the side of the damn plug and put a lock through it. And I had already seen TV shows I had to pick locks, and I'm like,
oh, this is easy.
Yeah, I can get through this. And so I started jacking around with it until I got good. could turn around and open it in like 10 seconds flat. So they'd hear noise and come down the hall, and they wouldn't know anything going on at all. They'd be like, "What was that noise?" I'd be like, "I don't know. I'm just like chilling out here, like not doing anything." And the next thing you know, like I'd be watching TV again or playing video games again. But at the end of the day, that crap comes back to haunt you. I'm just going to tell you that right now.
Oh,
Parents, your genetics, they're going to haunt you bad. So I got the door like behind me. Like this is my streamer sanctuary, okay? When I'm
It's the
streaming
gamer cave.
sanctuary, yeah, like when I'm streamer sanctuary gamer cave, this is it. The little kid decided to take a freaking paperclip and do just like Daddy did when he was a kid, and just freaking straight up.
Well,
Not even happy about it. But you know what? Smart kid. Props to him. He's
well,
smart.
I can say something similar. I mean, I used to tear shit apart and just leave it. And then one day it kind of dawned on me, well, every time I do this, I got to pick it up. So I might as well tear it apart and fix it. My parents had this old ass record player. I mean, really old ass record player. And it hadn't worked in I don't know how many years. And they went to the grocery store one day and they come back and I'm sitting on the floor and this record player is like in probably 100 pieces. And I'm trying to figure out why the hell the damn thing don't work. My dad walks over to me and he goes, "Well, you got it apart. You might as well put the damn needle on the damn thing." Hands me the there's a needle that's literally taped to the underside of this thing. And he was just too friggin' lazy to do it, or either that or was waiting for me to try and take the initiative. And he's like, "Well, if you've already got it apart, you might as well put the needle on it and put it back together." And I went, "What?" What the hell's a needle? I had no clue what the fuck I was doing, but it was cool to tear it apart. And by the time it was done with, I got it all back together. The damn thing worked. I'm like, "Okay, where's the records?" And he goes, "Dude, we ain't had no records in like 20 years. So I did all the work for nothing. It's kind of like going to work sometimes. Do all this work and then someone comes back and fucks you up. He screws you all up. Well, David, we've been on for, God, it's been at least an hour, I think. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I'm going to spend the rest of the evening with my wife.
One more side story.
Sure.
You got to let it happen. Once we're on bad kids. So when I was a kid, my parents also had, probably around the time of 12, they had locks on the computer. And I thought I was smart, and I thought I was like hacker material. And I was going through and I was trying to type in all the passwords that I could think of. And I was like, brain's going to be the password. And the funny thing is like, I was freaking stupid when it came to English. I won't even lie about it. And so I typed in brain thinking it was brain, and that was the password. So I had straight up nailed the password there.
Well, someone else in your family couldn't spell either.
Pretty much.
There was a lot of things that I did that was, well, I say that I was a bad kid sometimes, and I was actually a pretty good kid, but there's a few things that I did. Luckily, I never got caught doing, because I would probably have blisters on my ass. But it was one of the worst things I ever did, I guess, that I can remember. So if you're ever in watch your kids, because this happens and it's easily manipulated. So I used to get deficiency reports sent home from school because I would sit in class and goof off. And I wouldn't turn in my homework. I'd do the homework, but I just wouldn't turn it in, or I'd forget it, or whatever. So to me, school was boring because I could ace anything, no problem, and I picked it up pretty quick. But it ended up being a deal where I was bored. They didn't keep me interested. So I would get these stupid deficiency reports sent home, and this is like in the 5th and 6th grade. And I lived I lived close enough to the school I could ride my bike. Well, as soon as school was over with, and I knew that the deficiency reports were coming, I would stop at the mailbox on the way to the house. And it was right out front, and my parents never checked it till the next day, right? So my dad would check it on the way to work. Well, I knew when the mailman came, so I would stop at the mailbox and grab the deficiency report, throw it in my backpack or my pocket, whatever, and I would go in the bathroom. And when I would go in the bathroom, I'd act like I was taking a crap or whatever. I'd open it up and I'd read it and see which teacher it was from. I'd see which one it was from, and I'd put it back in the envelope. And we had a closet that opened up, and when it opened up, it was at the end of the bathtub, and there was a gap under the bathtub. So what I would do is I would just shimmy it under the bathtub as far as I could shimmy it. And we did a remodel one time. They put a shower in the place, so we had to pull the tub out. There was like 30 of them in there. And my dad's like, you want to tell me? And this is after I graduated high school. And he's like, is there something you want to tell me about these things? I said, oh yeah, that's old news. You know, I'd already told mom that. He goes, I didn't know anything about this shit. I'm like, oh, you can just throw them away. That was like 20 years ago. And that was the kind of stuff that I did. And, you know, the teachers are like, you know, they call my folks, did you get that report I sent you? I'm like, no, what report? Must have got lost in the mail, you know. And one time I got held after school. As soon as the teacher left, I was supposed to write up some kind of crap. As soon as the teacher left, I left. She'd gone down to the office and she was coming back. Well, as soon as she left, I left. And I get home and my mom's sitting on the front porch going, are you ready to go back yet? Because we're taking you back. I'm like, oh, shit. I should have went home. I should have went somewhere else. That's the kind of stuff I did. I didn't do anything major bad. I used to jump my truck in the middle of town. That was about the worst thing I did. Luckily, we knew all the cops. So I just got my ass chewed out. I never got tickets. And I don't know. I grew up in a small town, and I think every kid should have the opportunity to grow up in a small town. And because the level of schooling you get, for one, is a lot better than some of these city schools because you get more attention, even though it can still be boring and, you know, everybody knows your business, but that's not necessarily always a bad thing. There's a song that we talked about country music earlier, and there's a song that came out a long time ago, and I really relate to it. And it's everybody dies famous in a small town, and it's the truth. And I grew up in a town of 4,000 people, and in the town of 4,000 people, we had one of the astronauts on, I can't remember what missions, but he flew a bunch of missions. And he came to our school, and everybody's like, oh, this guy's really cool, you know. And the whole time, I didn't know that me and my dad used to go fishing with his dad all the time. Had no clue. And this guy, his son is a fucking astronaut. I'm like, really? And yeah, I mean, stuff like that, you know, remembering things like that is really cool. The guy's name was Mike Lounge, by the way. He actually died, believe it or not, he died of radiation poisoning from space.
Fucking hell.
Yep. The guy was like 56 years old. I got a chance to meet him. He came to our school and brought the astronaut suit and all that good stuff. The boots, we got to put the gloves on and all that good stuff. It was kind of cool. And that's actually the first time I even knew that I knew his dad. And to me, knowing his dad was actually cooler than knowing him. You know, I'm like, fuck,
Yeah.
I hang out with this guy on the weekends when we go fishing. And no idea. You know, he never mentioned it or never said anything. But
Well, it's like knowing the secret origin stories of Spider-Man or freaking Superman. It's like that kind of thing. I mean,
yeah,
honestly, for me, the way I see our problems right now, and the big part of our problems is we've entrusted our children. We've given our children over, and I've got an interesting story that's a sidetrack. I don't want to keep you up away from your wife too long because I know she's going to shoot me when I come up to her.
well, you better come up here.
But heck yeah, I want to, man. We got to do salmon fishing together.
No shit.
But
I'm about an hour and a half away from there, so we can do that.
that's no problem for me. But when I was a kid, and I mean, we're talking, I mean, this is fairly long ago now. I mean, I know I'm still young, but this is at least 20 years ago. More than that, actually. My parents pulled me out because they were already seeing a socialist agenda. They already decided to homeschool me, and I have more respect than I can ever possibly tell you for my parents for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I hadn't had that training experience of actually seeing what life is like through the eyes of an individual living that life, I never would have been the person I was. If I went to school, I have zero doubt I would have been brainwashed, told what to do, said, sit down, shut up, do your math problem. And the problem is since the 1950s, in the 1950s, college made sense. In the 1950s, school made sense. School still makes sense to some extent. But the problem I have with school is in the 1950s, you had no other way to learn.
Right.
If you wanted to learn a skill, you had to go to school for that skill.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody had to teach you that skill. Right now, I can go to YouTube. Today, I was on YouTube learning how to do screen printing, learning how to do Photoshop for screen printing,
Mm-hmm.
learning how to do something that makes $35 an hour just by looking on YouTube.
Yep.
I don't need a school for that. I don't need somebody to sit there and tell me that I need to spend $100,000 and go to 4 years of their education for it. And the next thing I'll say is that at 16 and a half, I finally graduated high school. I had been trying since I was 15 years old. For me, I do consider myself a believer in Jesus Christ. I don't hold it against anybody who doesn't. But at the end of the day, when I went in, I was going for a CHSPE, stands for California High School Proficiency Examination. I wrote a kick-ass report on why I believe Jesus Christ was my role model. I got graded a D-. And the next time I said that Thomas Jefferson was my role model, I got graded a D. The next time I kind of caught on to their system, I was 16 and a half years old. And for me, just so you guys know, I was in a situation to where I was homeschooled in weird circumstances. I didn't really have anybody who was overseeing me. For me, it was CHSPE or GED once I'm after 18. It wasn't like I was going by the normal means. And for a lot of it, I was self-taught because I was a strong-willed son of a bitch, which I still am at the end of the day. But I finally ended up writing my third report because I started getting wise, you know? My third report was on Bill Clinton as my hero, and I hated the son of a bitch.
You aced that one.
I got an A fucking minus on that. And that was the only thing that was holding me back. I graduated at 16 and a half years old.
You probably would have got an A+ if you wouldn't have mentioned Monica Lewinsky.
But the thing is, at the end of the day, I want to tell you parents right now, these kids who are in the school system, who don't have you in their lives, who have you too tired to come home and tell them hi, to have them too tired to come home and tell them what you can impart to them and what you can show them and what you can teach them outside of what their school is teaching them. That's part of the problem, because this is where we're at this situation. At the end of the day, 100% of the problem that we have right now is we've let the school system and the government take over the controlling of the minds of our children. And we've said that you now are irresponsible of our children, and whatever our children do is your problem. And I've seen this time and time again with parents, and I've seen this all over the place with different people who are in our groups. You've got to teach your children. You've got to teach them the Constitution, because the school's not going to do that. Anyway, Dustin, thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, man. And you know what? I agree with everything you just said. And I think the one of the biggest things that we can teach our kids is consequence. Consequence of your actions. That's a huge thing that's lacking in this world today. So David, thank you
100% agree.
David, thank you very much for coming on again. And as always, dude, it's always entertaining. We always have a good time. So that's part of this. And I love you, brother. And keep doing what you're doing. And I saw your speech at the Capitol. It was a magnificent thing. I watched the entire thing, and you got a gift for gab, and you got a hell of a gift for speech. So keep that up. And you've made me proud, at least knowing you and being in the group with you. So keep it up, brother.
Heck yeah, brother. We're always going to be there.
All right, man.
party. Over and out. Stay strong and keep fighting for our rights.
All right, and here comes the outro, folks.
All right.